stay in touch. I'll give the floor to my second colleague, and then we'll come to discussion and opening the floor for the audience to ask you. Okay? Is it okay to stay with us, Dr. Khadr?
Yes, yes, of course. I'm audible.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your valuable input. So now I will go to Dr. Dieter Tom. He's a dear colleague of mine. We work in the same school, actually. And he has a PhD in business leadership from US and an MBA in human resource development from Australia. He's the chair of the quality management and PBL committees at the School of Business at ACK. He has lived in Kuwait for the past 14 years, taught in ACK since 2007, and worked in the oil industry before then. He worked with Tasmania, Victoria University, Central Queensland University throughout his years in ACK. His passion is people, and he loves using PBL in higher education, project-based learning, in order to help students to learn. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, Dr. Dieter. It's our home, I know, but still we do.
Much appreciated. Can you all see my screen and hear my voice?
Yes, floor is yours, dear.
Right.
Go ahead.
So today I'm going to look at how ACK has had the PBL experience in the online context. And I'm going to look at it from a business perspective. Now, Dr. Martin Jaeger will look at it from the engineering perspective a little bit later on. First of all, what is PBL? Well, PBL is two things. It's problem-based learning and it's project-based learning. So in other words, a problem leads to a project solving it. And a project has a central problem directing it. So these are two sides of the same learning coin, the problem and the project. Now, projects are nothing new. There have been many projects throughout history. The Great Wall of China, the Great Pyramids, all of these are projects. In fact, learning by projects is also not new. Family businesses have developed children with projects. Apprenticeships have ensured that young people learn a trade. And most of you, I think, have also used projects in your teaching. Now, if we look in the last 100 years, there are many different practical learning approaches that have been developed. First of all, the emphasis on the human need for individual higher order, critical thinking and inquiry-based learning, where the key is asking deeper questions. Then the recognition of the importance of group and teamwork, as well as cooperative and collaborative learning. So the key here is working well with others. Then the identification of the importance of outcome-based education, training and assessment, or OBE. Here the key is key performance indicators. Then the requirement of work-based action learning, vocational skill development, competency-based education, or CVE, where the key is experiential learning. And actually we've used this at ACK for about 15 years already. And then finally, we have the focus on the problem and project-based learning, or PBL. And the key here is the solution of a problem through a project approach, which integrates all of these different types of learning. Now, if we look at the last 60 years, there have been some significant highlights in the development of PBL. In the 1960s, although many of us were not born there at that stage, students were rebelling against traditional established learning and were asking for more than just theory. In 1969, McMaster University in Canada, through their medical school, started its PBL program. And in fact, a lot of medical schools are using this approach today. Then in the 70s, two Danish universities started using PBL. And in fact, they were established with PBL as the central core philosophy. First of all, we had Roskilde University, which developed its problem-oriented project learning, or PPL. Then we had Aalborg University, which developed its problem-based learning. And we here at ACK essentially follow a modified version of the Aalborg system. Then, of course, we had other institutions like Maastricht, Linköping, etc., that followed suit. Now, in the last 15 years, at the business school in ACK, we have seen an evolution of how we actually use projects. So between 2007 to 2016, we taught units with different partners, Tasmania, Victoria, Central Queensland universities. But it was only in 2015 that PBL was actually included in our School of Business strategic plan. In 2016, we had some admin orientation, and in 2017, some lecturer training at Aalborg. In 2019, we had some more lecturer training, and a whole bunch of us actually got passionate about PBL. So the ACK School of Business does internal staff training before each semester, and around half of our professors now actually use PBL in the School of Business. And this figure has stayed quite consistent over the last 2 years, and it's been the same with face-to-face and online learning. Now, I can see many of you sitting there and being very skeptical of PBL. All right, I was like that too. I was very skeptical of using it. I thought it was just the easy way out instead of rigorous education. I had used project work in a minor way, but not through PBL. I was then sent to Aalborg University by ACK, and I received their training in their institutional PBL approach. I saw how they applied it in the whole community of Aalborg, from kindergarten right through to graduate studies. So they do this in collaboration with commerce and industry. They also use cross-functional teams, even at different levels, from postgraduate right through to undergraduate, and different specializations like engineering and business. And I have to confess to you, I am now a convert to the cult of PBL. Now, Aalborg problem-based learning is very specific. All educational activities at Aalborg University involve problem-based project work, which takes as its point of departure a set of principles that constitute the Aalborg model of problem-based learning. So this approach is internationally recognized and has over the years received great interest from universities, researchers, and students in Denmark as well as abroad. The Aalborg model includes project work based on authentic problems, also self-governed group work and collaboration. And actually, Aalborg is now a UNESCO-approved PBL center.
What?
Now, for those that don't understand Danish education, they essentially have a 3+2+3 model, where their initial degree is 3 years, the master's is 2 years, and then the doctorate is 3 years. Now, project work through PBL gets increased throughout the years that they are there in the basic degree and the master's. So in the first 5 years, project work is introduced, and then every year it progresses. So in year 1, they get training in the PBL modus of actually studying. They look at macro and fundamental courses. In year 2, they have functions combined with group projects. Year 3, they have holistic business projects, a complex thesis, and preparation for the master's level. So each semester looks essentially like this, where they begin with coursework, by the way, they still have many lectures and traditional uses of what we consider conventional lecturing. But what they do is then they incorporate project work from the start, and as the semester progresses, they increase that project work, so that by the end, when they do the verbal exam, they actually have equipped the students with the course knowledge that they need, and they've allowed the students to work on a project which applies that course knowledge. So PBL integrates a number of different things: problem analysis, problem solving, a project report. It includes a literature review, lectures, group studies, tutorials, fieldwork, and experiments. So what they try to do at Aalborg is they try to balance theory and practice. So when we look at the student participation and the supervisor or teacher role, it essentially tries to unite those two. So instead of being passive, the students are always active and they're always engaging in what they're being taught. So we really see a very nice integration of the problems, the projects, the guidance by the supervisor, the groups and how they work together, and a balance between the theory and the practice. So they do have the normal lecture halls that we have with normal lectures. They also have group activities and cubicles for group work. So the groups get together in these cubicles and they do brainstorming and they approach their project right from the start with an integrated approach. So the 5 Aalborg PBL principles are project organization, which creates the framework of problem-based learning, courses that support the project work, cooperation, which is a driving force in problem-based project work, the problem-based project work of the groups that must be exemplary, and then the students are responsible for their own learning achievements. Now, the main assessment in Aalborg and also in our PBL at ACK is the final defense. It's very much like a master's or a PhD defense. Now, in Aalborg, they take the whole day where they deal with one group over a period of about 6 hours, where the students actually present the project for an hour, they have a break, they have general discussions for about 2 hours, specific questions for each student for about an hour each, a break, then the examiners agree on the grades, and there's the announcement and justification of the grades. Now, we at ACK have adapted this slightly. Not all of us use the same approach, but my approach is slightly different, as each group gets 1 hour to present and individually defend their projects at the end. So I've just kind of compressed it a little bit. Now, there are many benefits of PBL at the student level, and I can preach to you and I can try and convince you, but I really hope that you'll try it for yourself. So, navigation in complex scenarios, increasing teamwork capacities, knowledge integration skills, changes in learning approaches which are centered on the student, increasing communication skills, identification of learning objectives, and self-organization of learning processes. Now, obviously, in terms of our experience at ACK, we had the COVID epidemic hit us like the rest of you in March 2020, and then we moved to an online format. As you know, there were many challenges for everyone to adapt to the online format of teaching. Now, PBL has its weaknesses, but its strengths significantly outweigh them, especially with online learning. Now, by the way, not much has changed in the way that it's taught, okay? But it has been easier to adapt to online learning than traditional teaching. Just to give you one example, this is the format that I use for my classes and assessments. So I have 2 online lectures per week of 1.5 hours each. The first 9 weeks of the semester are interactive lectures on textbook chapters. Yes, I still use a textbook. Then in week 5, we have assessment 1, which is the team agreement, where the groups really try to specify individual roles and responsibilities, group expectations and accountability, and the schedule of the projects with the deadlines. In week 12, I have the individual journal, which they submit. And this journal is really at the heart of PBL. And it's really where you can see the students that stand out and give them their individual grades. Then weeks 10 to 15, we have the presentations. And this has 2 parts to it, the group PowerPoint as well as individual questions. And by the way, those individual questions separate the sheep from the goats. I can see by asking those students oral questions who really knows their stuff. And then finally, we have in week 14, actually due tomorrow, the group written report, which kind of brings everything together. So if we look at PBL in an online context, there are advantages and there are disadvantages. But by far, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. So some of the advantages that I have found: students can still attend classes and meetings without a physical presence. Group meetings are formally scheduled on MS Teams, ensuring accountability. Then we have breakout rooms, which allow for group work to be done and monitored during lecture time, like there's cubicles at Aalborg. We also don't need individual written exams with software like Respondus Lockdown Browser, which can be an absolute nightmare, which I'm sure many of you have experienced. Interviews can also be done online using video conferencing software. Journals are done electronically through Turnitin, so they cannot be easily plagiarized. And those journals really help me see who knows their stuff. Now, PBL is not perfect. There are some disadvantages in an online context. So I don't know about the rest of you, but I really miss the face-to-face interaction and the physical presence of students. Also, the actual visits to the company are limited due to the online aspect and due to the COVID restrictions. The other thing that I really hate is that students bug professors at all times of day and night, sometimes with silly questions and expecting an immediate response. So at 1 a.m. in the morning, I get, Mr. At 2 a.m., Mr., are you there? 3 a.m., Mr., why are you not answering me? Right, meantime, I'm snoring quite happily in my bed. Now, there are many conceptual and theoretical issues when we talk about PBL. The 2 most controversial aspects are whether to use positivism or constructivism. So positivism is when knowledge exists as an absolute truth. Constructivism is when knowledge can be subjectively constructed. And historically, PBL has focused more on constructivism. Now, there is a continuum, the line between the 2 extremes, and it doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. We also need to consider, as we look at these aspects, the epistemological approach that we use, so the nature of knowledge, the methodology, the approach to knowledge, the values that we consider important in education, so the important principles of belief and practice, and of course, assessment, how we determine student learning. Now, PBL focuses to a large extent on constructivism, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we reject positivism completely. In other words, even Aalborg uses traditional lectures. They try to make them more interactive, and they try to establish a body of knowledge so that students can construct on that foundation. So we can see a healthy balance between positivism and constructivism. And finally, we also have obviously the digital taxonomy that Bloom's has developed since the original. So yes, we want to create, evaluate, analyze, apply, understand, and remember. So creating, we can do things like blogging, filming, podcasting, directing. Evaluating, grading, testing, posting, moderating. Analyzing, we can do mind mapping, surveying, linking, validating. Applying, we can do calculating, charting, editing, and uploading. Understanding, journaling, tweeting, tagging, and subscribing. Remembering, we can do bookmarking, copying, highlighting, and searching. So these develop both lower order and higher order thinking skills. And really, if we look at the world as it is changing, with all the differences in technology and the way that the needs of society are developing, we need to change the way that we teach and that we approach our students and their learning. Thank you very much.
Big thank you, Dr. Dieter. Actually, I was privileged to visit Alberg as well, and I was amazed with their approach of teaching students project-based learning. And definitely, it's like VR, AR, the soft skills, CDIO, PBL, all these are new strategies in teaching and engaging students. I would highly appreciate, Dr. Dieter, if you stay with us for